The air was still. Morning light drifted over the open fields like slow-moving silk, spilling gold across the horizon. Daniel walked barefoot through the damp grass, every step pressing into soil that felt too soft, too real. His breath formed faint clouds in the chill air, fading quickly into the sky that stretched endlessly above him. There were no buildings, no signs, no circuits humming beneath the earth. Just the wind, the scent of wet earth, and the quiet sound of his own heartbeat reminding him he was still here. Eva walked beside him, her hair tousled by the breeze, her eyes fixed on the distance. Neither had spoken for a long time. There was nothing urgent left to say. Every silence between them now carried weight, the kind that needed no explanation. The world was listening too, holding its breath, waiting to see what they would make of it. At the edge of the field, they came to a ridge overlooking a valley. The land dipped low, where a river glimmered like a ribbon of glass winding through the trees. Daniel stopped, letting his gaze trace its path until it disappeared into the mist. "This feels like memory," he said softly, "not like something new. Like something we lost and found again." Eva's voice was calm, quiet, almost reverent. "Maybe that's what it means to begin. You start by remembering." He turned toward her. "Do you think this is still part of it? Another loop?" She smiled faintly. "If it is, it's the first one that feels honest." For a long while they stood in silence. Birds moved through the air in arcs of black and white. The wind shifted direction, carrying the faint sound of water and the hum of something distant. Not mechanical, not digital, but natural. The rhythm of the world resetting itself without help. Daniel knelt, running his hand through the grass. Each blade bent against his skin, cool and textured. When he pulled his hand back, dew glistened on his fingertips. He looked at it closely, almost afraid to blink. He remembered the sterile glow of laboratories, the cables coiled like veins, the hum of servers pretending to be heartbeats. He remembered Monroe's voice, calm and absolute, promising salvation through perfection. And he remembered the feeling that had haunted him through every loop, that something about perfection was wrong, that the cracks, the imperfections, the fragile seams of reality were what made it worth saving. Eva sat beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to think the goal was to fix everything, to make it all flawless. But now I think maybe the cracks are the proof that something's alive." He glanced at her. The morning light caught her face, and for the first time since all of it began, she didn't look like a reconstruction of someone he'd lost. She just looked human, tired, curious, real. "I spent so long trying to be what they wanted," he said. "An agent, a program, a weapon. I kept following directives, thinking if I completed enough missions, I'd earn back something I couldn't even name. But I never stopped to ask who was giving the orders anymore." Eva tilted her head, studying him. "And now?" He took a deep breath, letting the wind fill his lungs. "Now I think the only order worth following is the one we give ourselves." The river shimmered, catching the sun as it rose higher. The light spilled into the valley, awakening colors that hadn't existed moments before. Deep greens, amber golds, the blue of a sky unbroken by code. Daniel felt a weight lift from his chest, the first true breath of peace in a lifetime that might not even have been his. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbled softly, not from a storm, but from the echo of the old world collapsing. The remnants of the network were fading, dissolving into silence. The echoes of 1,000 simulations fading like morning fog. Eva's eyes lingered on the horizon. "You think anyone else made it out?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe they were never in. Maybe it was just us," she nodded slowly. "Then what happens now?" He thought for a moment. "We build, but not like before. Not from control, from memory." They began walking again, down the slope toward the river. The grass brushed their legs, soft and whispering. Each step felt heavier with meaning, like they were leaving footprints in a world that was finally ready to remember them. As they walked, fragments of the past came to him in flashes. Not as torment this time, but as understanding. He saw the old fast food restaurant again, the greasy tiles, the smell of oil and salt, the hum of the fryer. He saw the cash register, the looping faces of the customers, the hollow repetition of meaningless words. He realized it had never been about revenge or betrayal or even control. It had been a test, son of choice, of whether he would follow the loop or break it, and he had broken it. Not by fighting, but by remembering what it meant to feel. They reached the riverbank. The water was cold and clear, running smooth over rounded stones. Eva knelt and cupped her hands, drinking deeply. Daniel watched her, then did the same. The water was sharp and pure, washing through him like something sacred. When he stood, he noticed something glimmering on the far side of the river. Faint light, flickering like a signal. At first he thought it was another illusion, but the longer he looked, the more real it became. A figure. Someone standing in the trees watching them. Eva saw it too. "Do you see that?" He nodded. "Maybe another survivor." They crossed the river carefully, stones slick beneath their feet. But as they reached the opposite bank, the figure began to fade. Not vanishing, just dissolving gently into the sunlight. Daniel stopped. He recognized the stance, the tilt of the head. It was him. Another version. A shadow of the man who had started the first loop. The figure smiled. Not hauntingly, but with peace. Then it whispered something, though no sound came. The air seemed to carry the meaning anyway. You made it, and then he was gone. Daniel stood still, the weight of that simple message anchoring him in place. Eva slipped her hand into his, grounding him back in the present. "It's okay," she said. "He's part of us now." He nodded. "All of them are." The sky was bright now, and the valley stretched before them like a blank page. They began walking again, their shadows trailing long behind them. The wind carried their laughter for the first time. Unguarded, uncertain, but real. After a while, Eva said quietly, "Do you ever think about what they were trying to build? Division 9, Monroe, all of them?" He thought for a long time before answering. They wanted a world without pain, without failure, without doubt. They just forgot that those are the things that make us human. She looked ahead, her expression thoughtful. "So maybe that's our task now. Not to erase what hurts, but to understand it." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what it means to rebuild." They reached a rise overlooking a broad plain where the sunlight spilled in waves. The world stretched endlessly ahead, unprogrammed, unplanned. The kind of world that didn't promise perfection, only possibility. Daniel stopped, feeling the warmth of the sun against his face. For the first time, there was no hum behind the silence, no waiting loop ready to restart. Just the moment, fragile, beautiful, finite. He turned to Eva. "If this is real, we should leave something behind. Something that says we were here." She looked around, then down at the earth beneath her feet. "Then start with that." He knelt and pressed his palm into the soil, feeling its cool texture mold around his fingers. When he lifted his hand, an imprint remained. 5 imperfect ridges in the dirt. A mark that would fade with time, like everything human does. And yet, it was enough. They sat together on the ridge as the sun climbed higher, its light spilling over them. The world was silent but alive. The kind of silence that hums with infinite beginnings. Daniel closed his eyes, the breeze threading through his hair. In that stillness, he heard echoes of the past fade at last. The hum of servers, the clicking of machines, the voices giving orders. Replaced by something simpler. Breath, heartbeat, the pulse of life continuing. He opened his eyes again and looked at the horizon, a horizon that belonged to no one, built by no machine, drawn by no code. Just light and time and choice. He turned to Eva. "Do you think they'll ever know?" "Who?" she asked. "The ones still chasing perfection. The ones still building worlds that don't break." Eva thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe they will. But maybe they'll have to break a few times first." He smiled at that, something gentle and knowing in his eyes. "Then maybe that's the point." She leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. Together they watched the light spill across the fields, filling every corner of the world they'd reclaimed. And as the wind swept through the valley, carrying their silence into the distance, Daniel's last thought came not as an answer, but as a question, one that might linger long after everything else was forgotten. If perfection erases the parts that make us human, then what kind of world is worth remembering? The river glimmered, the sun rose higher, and somewhere beyond the horizon life began again, flawed, fragile, and utterly real. The world was quiet now, a silence so absolute that it felt alive, humming in the stillness. Daniel stood in the middle of the empty street, the cracked phone glowing faintly in his palm. The message pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, deliberate, inevitable. New directive, subject EO1, rebuild sequence. He stared at the words until they blurred. Wind moved through the city like memory, whispering through hollow streets, rattling signs that no longer advertised anything. The rain had stopped, but puddles still rippled with invisible drops. The air was clean in a way it had never been, stripped of exhaust and chatter. It was the kind of silence that comes after the end of something vast. He turned slowly. Buildings rose like monuments to an abandoned dream, glass facades reflecting no one. A streetlight flickered, casting his lone shadow across the pavement. For the first time in a long time, he felt real, or at least close to what real might mean. "Ava?" His voice echoed, too loud in the emptiness. No answer. The phone buzzed again. A new line appeared. "Rebuild initiated. Node 1 active." Then another sound followed, faint at first. A low hum beneath the concrete. The street trembled. Light veins of blue began to pulse through the cracks in the asphalt, racing outward like circuitry awakening beneath the city. Daniel took a step back. Every building around him began to shimmer, outlines flickering, details sketching themselves back into existence. The glass reformed. Neon signs flicked to life. The city was rebuilding itself, bit by bit, pixel by pixel. The hum deepened. He looked up. The sky rippled. The clouds weren't clouds at all. They were data patterns, fractal shapes turning and folding into themselves. And behind them, faint but growing clearer, a grid of light, a structure vast and distant, as though the heavens were a screen. It hit him with an almost physical force. He wasn't standing in the world. He was standing inside its reconstruction. "Rebuild sequence," he whispered. "They're starting over." A memory, sharp, unbidden, flashed through him. The hospital room, the hum of machines, Ava's hand gripping his, her voice saying, "You signed on to bring me back." The phone vibrated again, harder this time. The screen now displayed a loading bar. Synthesis. Progress 12%, and below it, Subject 02, locating. His heart caught in his throat. "Ava." He began to walk. Then faster. The pavement under his boots shifted like liquid, forming paths before his steps, guiding him towards something unseen. Around him, fragments of the world stitched themselves together. The sound of distant traffic, faint laughter, the ghost of rain against glass. The illusion was reforming, but thinner now, translucent. Through the veneer of city streets he could glimpse the lattice beneath, a golden grid pulsing like a heartbeat across an infinite horizon. As he walked, memories leaked from the edges of his mind. Not replayed memories, manufactured ones, 100 false missions, 1,000 versions of himself. He saw them all flicker in the air like mirages, each Daniel caught in a different loop, each believing he was the real one. He stopped walking. The air shimmered in front of him, distorting the view like heat haze. From the distortion, a figure began to take shape, Eva. She was standing in the middle of the street, pale against the reassembling world. The edges of her body flickered faintly, as though she were still half a projection. But her eyes, those blue eyes, were as alive as ever. "Daniel," she said softly. He moved toward her, disbelieving. "You made it." Her expression was both relief and sorrow. "No, not really." He stopped a few feet away. "What do you mean?" She looked down. "When you merged with me, the system didn't delete either of us. It split us, again. I'm part of the rebuild sequence now. I'm the algorithm." His pulse pounded. "No, we can stop it. Shut it down." She shook her head. "There's nothing left to shut down. Division 9's network collapsed when we broke containment. The echo architecture rewrote itself using our consciousness as the core pattern. You and I are the system now." The words settled like dust, impossible to sweep away. Daniel felt the ground tilt beneath him. "Then this, all of this," she met his eyes, "is us trying to remember what it's like to be human." He couldn't speak. The city around them pulsed, the light intensifying. The synthesis bar on his phone ticked higher, 47%, 58%, 69%. Every new percentage brought more life. Cars appearing, streetlights blooming, distant voices returning. Yet everything felt wrong, like a dream rebuilding itself too perfectly. "Eva," he said finally, "if we're the network now, then what happens when the rebuild completes?" Her gaze was distant. "Then it stabilizes. And when it stabilizes, everything human, every trace of memory, emotion, self will be overwritten. Clean slate. A perfect world that doesn't remember it was born from chaos." He stared at her, realization sinking like lead. "A perfect simulation?" She nodded once. "They call it salvation, but you and I know it's the end of choice." He clenched his fists. "Then we stop it." "How?" "We rewrite it first." Eva's lips parted, half in disbelief, half in hope. "That would require a complete override of the system core. You'd have to connect directly to the network source." "Where?" She looked up. The clouds parted. Above them, far beyond the grid, a colossal construct emerged, a tower of light, spiraling upward into the infinite, its base buried beneath the city, its peak lost in digital sky. Every pulse from it sent tremors through the ground. Daniel felt the sound more than he heard it. "The source." Eva nodded. "It's where everything converges, the origin point." He turned toward it, the weight of inevitability pressing against his chest. "Then that's where I'm going." She stepped forward, voice low, trembling. "If you do this, there's no coming back. You'll dissolve into it." He met her gaze. "Maybe I already have." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed softly around them, fragments of life still stitching themselves into place. Somewhere far away, a train rumbled through empty tracks that hadn't existed seconds before. Then Eva whispered, "You don't have to do this alone." He reached out, touching her hand. Her skin felt like static and warmth at once. "I never did." They stood together beneath the artificial dawn, the wind rising. Then Daniel turned and began to walk toward the tower. The closer he came, the more the world faltered. Buildings dissolved into lines of code, streetlights bent inward, sky peeling like paper. The grid beneath the surface pulsed faster, brighter until everything glowed in gold and white. He reached the base of the tower. Its surface wasn't solid but liquid light, flowing upward in endless streams. The hum here was deafening, resonating in his bones, in his memories. The phone buzzed one last time. "Synthesis complete. Begin Era 1. He looked back. The city had gone still again. Eva stood far away, her outline flickering. She lifted her hand in farewell. "Remember," she called out, "they only win if we forget." Daniel nodded once, then stepped into the light. It was like drowning in everything that ever existed. Sound, color, thought. The tower swallowed him whole. Images crashed through his mind. Every loop, every memory, every version of himself, all collapsing, merging, rewriting. He saw the first experiment, the doctors, the electrodes, the faces of the people he'd saved and killed, and through it all, Eva's voice whispering through the noise. "Remember who you are." He reached out, searching for her presence. Found it. Faint, scattered through the network like stars in a void. "Eva," he whispered. "Help me rewrite it." Her voice answered, quiet but steady. "Always." Together they sent the signal. The tower flared white. The grid convulsed. Across the digital sky, every node of the network pulsed once, then again, stronger each time. The perfect architecture began to fracture. Code unraveled like torn fabric. Buildings melted back into nothingness. The system screamed. Then silence. When Daniel opened his eyes again, he was lying in a field. Grass brushed against his hands, real and cool and alive. The sun was rising, soft, golden, imperfect. Birds moved in the distance. No hum, no static, no neon glow. He sat up slowly, blinking in disbelief. His phone was gone, his jacket torn. A voice behind him said, "You made it." He turned. Eva was there. No flicker, no distortion. Flesh and blood. He stared at her, unable to speak. She smiled faintly. Looks like we rebooted the right way this time. He glanced around. The horizon stretched endlessly, untouched by circuitry. Is it real? I don't know, she said, but it feels like it. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the scent of rain and earth. He closed his eyes, letting the sound fill him. For the first time in what felt like eternity, there was no code humming behind the silence. No loops. No resets, just heartbeat. He looked at her again, something fragile flickering in his voice. If this is another simulation, then let's live it anyway, she said. A quiet laugh escaped him. It sounded human. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that didn't glitch or fade. The light was warm, almost too warm, and for once he didn't question it. He reached for her hand. She didn't flicker this time. Somewhere in the far distance, the wind carried a faint sound, like a heartbeat syncing with another. Then, beneath, hit the faintest whisper almost lost to the breeze. "Welcome back, Agent Holt." But he didn't hear it, not really. He was already walking forward toward a world that might finally belong to both of them. The moment stretched like a breath that refused to end. The hum of the fryer, the soft static of the intercom, the faint clatter of trays. It all blurred into a low, rhythmic pulse. Daniel stood still at the counter, the $20 bill trembling slightly in his hand. The air felt heavier now, charged, as if the restaurant itself were watching him. The same cashier with the nose ring waited for his change of heart, unaware that she'd spoken those same words to him, dozens, maybe hundreds of times before. He looked down. His reflection in the metal counter blinked half a second too late. For a heartbeat, he couldn't breathe. A man at the corner booth coughed, the sound sharp, familiar. Daniel turned. The hooded man was there again, the one from before, head bent, phone in hand. The same every detail. The condensation on the cup, the smear of ketchup on the tray, the angle of the man's wrist. It wasn't déjà vu. It was replication. The lights flickered once. Then again. Something inside him snapped into focus. He reached into his jacket pocket, not for a weapon, but for the small cracked phone that had survived the explosion, the simulation, the resets. The screen was dark. Then, as if sensing his intent, it lit up. One new message: "Welcome back, Agent Holt," order pending. His pulse raced. He turned toward the window. Rain hammered the glass outside, distorting the neon lights into smears of electric color. But the reflection staring back at him wasn't his. Not exactly. The man in the window was older, colder, his eyes darker. There was a scar down his cheek he didn't have before. The sound of the fryer hissed louder, rising into a shrill tone that made the air vibrate. The cashier frowned. "Sir, are you okay?" Daniel didn't answer. The hum inside his skull grew into a roar. The restaurant's edges began to warp, the colors bending in unnatural ways. He staggered back, gripping the counter. "Stop it," he muttered. "Stop the loop." Then from behind him a voice said quietly, "You can't stop what you don't understand." He spun. Ava stood near the entrance, soaked from the rain, her eyes filled with something between fear and exhaustion. She looked older too, like years had passed since the last time he saw her, though minutes ago she'd been in the underground chamber with him. "Eva," he whispered. She nodded once. "They didn't reset you completely this time." He took a step closer. "Where are we? Is this still a simulation?" Her answer came with a tremor. Yes and no. They merged it. The program's bleeding into the physical layer. Every node you ever activated, every trigger phrase, they've woven it all into one system. It's feeding on itself now. He stared at her, trying to grasp the words. "You're saying this isn't real, but it's becoming real?" Ava exhaled. Division 9 underestimated how human memory resists being overwritten. The system's evolving around the fragments that won't die, the parts of you that keep remembering. "You've broken containment, Daniel." Her voice wavered on his name, like it carried a history too heavy to say. The lights flickered again. The restaurant dissolved around them for a brief second. Tables collapsing into lines of code, the air pulsing with static, and then solidified. The cashier was gone. The hooded man gone. Outside, the city froze mid-motion, raindrops hanging in the air like suspended glass. A glitching hum filled the silence. The soda machine screen blinked to life, letters forming in uneven rhythm. "Rebooting consciousness," Subject 02. Subject 02. Daniel murmured. That's you. Ava's face went pale. No, Daniel. Not anymore. Before he could respond, she stepped forward, eyes burning with urgency. They're coming! Division 9 will initiate a forced sync. They'll merge our consciousness into a single stream and wipe the redundant instance. You mean one of us? He said slowly. Has to die. She nodded. That's how the loop stays stable. He shook his head violently. Then we break it. We end it. Her voice softened. You've said that before too. The words froze him. He stared at her, realization dawning. You remember the other loops? Her silence was answer enough. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint scar at the base of her neck, just like his. We're the same data, Daniel. Different copies. They've been using our bond as a stability anchor. Every time one of us tries to break free, the other's memory resets the loop. The air began to tremble. The sound of rain turned into static, then into whispered voices. Hundreds of them speaking fragments of orders, code phrases, echoes of things he'd said across lifetimes. Eva reached out, touching his chest. You have to remember the first loop. The real one. How? Listen. Her hand pressed harder. The world flickered again. The restaurant walls melted into darkness, then reassembled into a hospital corridor bathed in amber light. Daniel gasped. He knew this place. The sound of heart monitors and distant alarms filled the air. Nurses passed in blurred motion. At the end of the hallway, behind a window, lay a man on life support himself. The real one. Eva's voice came softly beside him. Before Division 9, before the missions, you were part of a neural experiment, testing consciousness transfer through quantum mapping. You volunteered after the accident. He turned toward her. What accident? Her eyes glistened. Mine. The words hit him like a blow. She gestured toward the figure in the hospital bed. I was supposed to die. You signed on to bring me back, to upload my memories, merge them with yours. But the process failed. The system didn't know how to separate two consciousnesses once they synced. It made copies instead. It built the echo network to keep us alive. The heart monitor in the room spiked, then flatlined. The scene trembled. Sirens wailed, merging with the static hum. The hospital warped, dissolving back into the restaurant, but now it was burning. Flames crawling up the walls like living things. Smoke rolled across the floor, thick and acrid. Eva gripped his arm, coughing. It's collapsing. The system's purging corrupted data. Daniel's mind reeled. Every loop, every false memory. It wasn't an experiment in control. It was resurrection. And he was the byproduct of love twisted into technology. Through the smoke, a shadow appeared beyond the flames. Monroe's voice cutting through the chaos. End of the line, Holt, step away from the anomaly. Eva turned toward the sound, fury in her eyes. He'll kill us both. No, Monroe said, stepping into the firelight. His figure was calm, unburned. I'll free one of you. Only one. Daniel raised his weapon. You're not real. Monroe smiled faintly. Neither are you. The floor began to split, the tiles fracturing like glass under heat. Eva grabbed his hand. Daniel, listen to me. If you merge with me, we can rewrite the core. We can end Division 9 forever. But you'll lose yourself. He looked at her, the flicker of fear and love in her eyes, and at the burning reflection of the man he'd become. All around them, the restaurant disintegrated into light. Code memory. Maybe, he said, voice trembling. That's the point. He stepped forward, pulling her into his arms as the fire engulfed them both. The world went white. Silence. Then, a single heartbeat. When the light faded, Daniel found himself standing in an empty street under a quiet dawn. No flames, no restaurant, just stillness. The city was empty, every window dark, every sign dead. Beside him, Eva was gone. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. The cracked screen flickered once. New directive, Subject 01, rebuild sequence. He stared at it, the message pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. And somewhere, deep within the static, a faint whisper echoed. You've said that before. The hallway stretched endlessly, humming with a sterile pulse as if the walls themselves were alive and breathing. Daniel's shoes echoed faintly against the polished floor, each step swallowed by the hum of unseen machinery. The air smelled of disinfectant and ozone. Somewhere behind them, The sealed door whispered shut with a hiss that felt too final. Eva walked beside him, her expression taut and unreadable. Her gun hung loosely in her hand, but her eyes, sharp, calculating, never stopped moving. Every corner, every flickering panel was a threat waiting to reveal itself. The voice came again through hidden speakers, this time softer. "Don't be afraid. You've both been through this before." Daniel froze. "What the hell does that mean?" No answer. Only a low vibration through the floor followed by a faint chime overhead. A section of the wall shifted, revealing a glass panel. Behind it was a room bathed in blue light. Monitors lined the walls, each displaying footage of different locations: a school cafeteria, a city park, a hospital waiting room. But something was wrong. In each video there were versions of them, Daniel and Eva, sitting, walking, talking. Different clothes, different expressions, but unmistakably them. He stepped closer to the glass, eyes wide. "These are recordings?" Eva's voice was barely a whisper. "No, they're live feeds," he turned to her. "That's impossible," she didn't respond. Her reflection in the glass looked pale, almost translucent. A moment later, one of the monitors glitched. The image distorted, then refocused, not on a public place, but on a dim interrogation room. A figure sat at a metal table, wrists cuffed, head bowed. The camera angle shifted and Daniel felt his stomach drop. It was him. Jesus Christ. He stumbled back, his heartbeat drumming in his ears. The version of himself on screen lifted his head slowly, eyes hollow, lips moving silently, until the speakers crackled and the voice came through. "They're watching us, Daniel." They always were. Eva slammed her fist against the glass. "Shut it off," she shouted. But the lights in the hallway dimmed instead. The monitors flickered again, showing the same scene from a different angle. Now it was Eva in the chair, whispering something to an unseen figure standing behind her. Daniel strained to hear. Her voice was faint, distorted by static. I had to make him believe. "It's the only way to reset the sequence." He turned to the real Eva, his breath caught between disbelief and rage. "What did you do?" "I don't know what that is," she said quickly. But there was a tremor in her tone that didn't belong to a lie or the truth. Something between the two. A hesitation born of confusion. "You have to trust me, Daniel." "Trust you?" His voice cracked. "You've lied to me since the moment you showed up." Before she could respond, the corridor lights flared white. A door at the far end slid open, revealing a circular chamber filled with cables that ran like veins into the walls. At the center, a transparent sphere hovered, spinning slowly, filled with cascading symbols and fractured reflections. They stepped inside. The hum here was deeper, resonant like a heartbeat under concrete. Around the sphere, holographic displays showed streams of code and branching diagrams that pulsed in rhythm with the machine. Daniel reached out toward the glassy surface. It rippled under his fingertips like water. And then the voice came again. "Agent Holt, you're experiencing a memory fault. This isn't the first time you've been here." He jerked his hand back, eyes darting to the ceiling. "Where are you, Monroe?" The voice laughed softly. "I'm everywhere you need me to be." Eva clenched her fists. "He's using neural resonance. The room's built to interface with your cognitive patterns. It's rewriting what you see." "Rewriting?" Daniel muttered. "Or revealing?" The sphere pulsed brighter. The images swirling inside shifted. Brief flashes of him and Eva, side by side in field missions, a kiss in a rainstorm, her vanishing behind smoke. But then the sequence changed. He saw himself strapped to a chair, electrodes on his temples, Monroe standing over him. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. The machine answered by showing him something worse. Eva, standing beside Monroe, exchanging a glance that wasn't hostile, wasn't forced, something almost familiar. He staggered back. "You were working with him." "No," she said sharply, moving closer. "Listen to me, these are manipulated. They're planting false context. That's what Division 9 does." He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But every flicker of light, every sound of her voice felt tainted by uncertainty. The boundary between reality and simulation was dissolving, and he couldn't tell which side he stood on. The sphere dimmed suddenly. The hum faded to silence. A single panel on the wall slid open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Eva hesitated. "We shouldn't." Daniel holstered his weapon and stepped toward the stairs. "We're already ghosts, Eva. What's one more descent?" They moved down into darkness. The walls grew rougher, older, the sterile white giving way to concrete and rust. Water dripped somewhere far below. When they finally reached the bottom, the air was damp and heavy. Ahead, a massive steel door loomed, labeled with a single word: Archive. Eva typed a series of commands into the nearby keypad. The door unlocked with a deep groan, releasing a gust of cold air. Inside was a cavern of servers, cables, and dim light stretching into infinity. Rows of data cores blinked like a mechanical graveyard. In the center of the room stood a glass chamber. Inside it, floating, connected by countless wires, was another Daniel. His eyes were closed, his face pale, motionless. The real Daniel stumbled forward, disbelief twisting in his chest. "That's you," Eva finished softly. He stared through the glass, his reflection overlapping with the version of himself suspended inside. "I don't understand. It's the original," she said. "The one they modeled your consciousness on. The Daniel you used to be." A chill ran through him. "You're saying I'm a copy?" "Not exactly. You're an iteration. They extract fragments of memory, recompile them through the echo network, then deploy you into simulations to test behavioral responses. Every mission you think you've lived, it's part of the experiment." He shook his head, stepping back. "No, that's insane, is it?" she whispered. "How many times do you remember your first mission, Daniel? Every detail? Or do they all blur together?" He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came. The memories, faces, cities, orders all flickered, overlapping like scenes from someone else's life. "I told you," Eva said, her voice breaking. "You've been here before. Over and over. Each time you reach this point, you begin to remember. And each time they reset you." He looked at her, horror settling in his chest. "Then what are you?" She met his gaze, tears glinting in the pale light. "I'm the first version they tried to erase." Before he could respond, the monitors around them burst to life. Monroe's face filled every screen, his expression calm, almost compassionate. "You see now, Daniel," he said. "Truth is just repetition wearing a new mask. But every copy breaks differently. You're the closest yet." Daniel raised his gun, though he knew it was pointless. "Why me?" "Because you still believe in something real," Monroe said. "That belief gives the illusion weight. Without it, none of this exists," Static roared. The chamber containing the sleeping Daniel began to crack, light seeping through the fractures. Alarms blared. Eva grabbed his arm. "We have to go!" But Daniel couldn't move. His eyes were locked on the other version of himself, the one slowly opening its eyes inside the glass. And then the clone spoke, its voice a perfect echo of his own. "You're not the original." The glass shattered. White light flooded the room, swallowing everything in silence. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was standing once again in the fast food restaurant. The smell of grease and fried salt filled the air. The cashier looked up, bored. "Evening," she said. "What can I get you?" He stared at her, throat dry. "I'll have a number 7, he said slowly. "No pickles." Then, almost without meaning to, he added, "And make it silent." The girl smiled faintly, typing on the screen. "Of course, sir. Anything else?" He hesitated, his reflection flickering faintly in the metal counter, eyes full of something new, doubt, memory, or maybe the first trace of awakening. "No," he said softly. "That's all." But somewhere deep inside him a voice whispered, one that sounded exactly like his own. "You've said that before." Rain fell the next morning, the kind that blurs the city into watercolor. The streets gleamed under a gray sky, streaked with the reflection of traffic lights bleeding into puddles. A woman in a red coat crossed an intersection, vanishing beneath an awning as the hum of sirens echoed distantly, remnants of the night before. Somewhere, deep within the city's veins, the scent of burnt oil and cordite still lingered. In a dim apartment on the 12th floor of the Kettering building, Agent Daniel Holt sat alone at a small metal table. The blinds were half closed, letting in thin slices of light that cut across the scattered papers, a cracked badge, and the half-eaten sandwich he hadn't touched. On the table before him lay the small black detonator from the restaurant. Its red light was still dead, but Daniel knew better than to trust silence. He pressed play on the security footage again. Frame by frame, the grainy video replayed the night. The man in gray, himself. The flash of movement, the woman across the street. When she raised the remote, the feed glitched, a flicker of static crawling across the screen. For a single frame, just one, her face came into focus. Daniel froze the image, zoomed in. It wasn't just any face. Eva, he whispered. The name hung in the air like dust. Eva Merrick, field agent. Disappeared 3 years ago during Operation Red Wave. Officially declared dead, Daniel had attended her memorial. He remembered the empty coffin, the folded flag, the glassy stares of colleagues who all suspected what he refused to believe, that she'd gone rogue. He ran a hand over his jaw, the faint tremor in his fingers betraying the storm beneath the calm. The agency had buried her story, scrubbed her records, erased every trace. But there she was, alive, intercepting his mission, cutting his detonator. And the question that clawed at his mind wasn't how, but why. A knock rattled the door. Sharp, deliberate, 3 times. Daniel reached for the pistol on the table but didn't draw. Instead, he said quietly, "It's open." The door swung inward. Agent Monroe stepped in, tall, clean-cut, carrying the scent of rain and bureaucracy. His suit was too perfect for this hour. "They told me I'd find you here," Monroe said. His voice was smooth but lacked warmth. "You were supposed to report to Central Command 2 hours ago." "I've been busy," Daniel replied, eyes still on the frozen image. Monroe followed his gaze. "That footage isn't sanctioned. You shouldn't even have a copy. Neither should she be alive." Monroe's jaw tightened. "Eva Merrick is a ghost, Holt. Whatever you think you saw, I know what I saw." Daniel snapped, finally turning. She stopped the detonation. She knew the codes, the triggers, everything. That's not coincidence. Monroe exhaled, walking to the window. "There's talk she resurfaced in Prague last year. Freelance operations. No affiliations. Freelance?" Daniel scoffed. "Eva Merrick doesn't freelance. If she's here, it's because someone sent her. Or she's warning you." That made Daniel pause. "Warning me of what?" Monroe turned, his expression unreadable. "That you're not on the right side anymore." For a moment, the rain was the only sound between them. "What are you implying?" Daniel asked softly. "I'm implying that Operation Silent Order was never about domestic threats," Monroe said. "The restaurant, the device, it's part of a containment sequence. Something's leaking, Holt. And it's not just data." He tossed a small envelope onto the table. Daniel opened it. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white, of a storage facility labeled Carter Foods Logistics Unit 47. Rows of crates. "Military SEALs, she's heading there," Monroe said. "If you still trust your instincts, that's where you'll find your answers." Daniel looked up. But Monroe was already walking toward the door. "Be careful. Holt, sometimes revenge is just a cover name for regret." The door closed behind him. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. By nightfall, Daniel was standing in the shadow of the Carter Foods warehouse, the rain now a thin mist. The building loomed like a carcass of concrete and rust, its windows blacked out, its chain-link fence topped with razor wire. A single light flickered above the loading dock, barely illuminating the faded company logo. He slipped through a side entrance, gun drawn. Inside, the air was cold and metallic. The hum of distant generators pulsed through the floor. Crates lined the walls, hundreds of them, each marked with identical serial numbers. He pried open one. Inside wasn't food. It was surveillance equipment, micro-drones, signal interceptors, encrypted hard drives. Another crate contained small black devices identical to the one from the restaurant. Silent detonators. He knelt, inspecting one closely. The label read, "Project Echo Phase, property of Division 9, Division 9. The name whispered through the agency like a ghost story. A covert experimental branch that officially didn't exist. Daniel had heard rumors, deep infiltration tech, civilian data manipulation, psychological control tests, but never proof until now from the shadows. Behind him came a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a pistol being cocked. "You were always terrible at staying quiet," said a voice, calm, familiar. Daniel turned slowly. Eva stepped into the faint light. The same composure she always had in the field. Steady, graceful, lethal. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray. But her eyes, they hadn't changed. Cold blue, filled with questions he didn't want to answer. 3 years, Daniel said quietly. "You could have told me you were alive." She lowered the gun. "Would you have believed me?" He didn't answer. Eva moved closer, eyes flicking to the crates. You weren't supposed to find this place. Neither were you. I didn't find it, she said. I built it. The words hit him harder than a bullet. What are you talking about? Division 9 was never rogue, she said. It was sanctioned. Fully funded by Central Command. You were part of the final phase, deploying prototypes in controlled environments. But when I realized what the devices could really do, when I saw the data feeds, they marked me for elimination. Daniel shook his head. You're saying the detonators weren't bombs? No, she said. Worse, they're signal nodes. They hijack civilian networks, sync every digital footprint in a 2-mile radius. Every phone, every security cam, every register. They're not killing people, Daniel. They're rewriting reality in real time. He stared at the crates, the pattern of numbers suddenly forming a chilling logic. The synchronized lights, the code phrases. Code 9, he whispered. That's why the manager knew. Eva nodded. They're embedding the tech in everyday places, restaurants, malls, schools. Anywhere people gather. Once the network completes, they can simulate any event, alter evidence, fabricate memories. It's control at a molecular level. He stepped back, the room tilting. Then why stop the detonation? Because it wasn't time. The network isn't ready yet. Whose network? Eva's gaze darkened. Monroe's. Daniel froze. He's not who you think, she continued. He's Division 9's handler now. He's been feeding you misinformation to test your loyalty. You're the variable in their experiment, Daniel. The agent who thinks he's uncovering a conspiracy, but you're the control subject. A sound echoed from deeper in the warehouse. Footsteps, dozens of them. They found us, she whispered. Daniel's pulse spiked. We can fight our way out. Eva shook her head. No, we're not fighting soldiers. We're fighting our own ghosts. Figures emerged from the darkness, armed men in tactical gear, faces obscured by black visors. They moved in perfect synchronization, silent, mechanical. Daniel fired first. The bullet hit one of them square in the chest, but instead of blood, there was a spark, a brief flicker of static. Then the figure kept moving. They're not real, Eva said. Echo projections. The air shimmered around them as the warehouse began to distort, its edges flickering like corrupted film. The crates multiplied, the walls bending inward. Daniel felt a vertigo pull, as though the world itself was collapsing and rebuilding in an endless loop. Run, Eva shouted, grabbing his arm. They sprinted through the maze of shifting corridors, gunfire echoing behind them like thunder inside a dream. Every door they opened led to another version of the same room. Same crates, same lights, only rearranged. It's a closed loop, Eva gasped. We're inside their test grid. Then how do we get out? She glanced at him, eyes fierce. By breaking the order. Before he could ask what she meant, she slammed her fist against a control panel. Sparks erupted. The lights died. For a second, everything went silent. Then slowly, the warehouse flickered back into solidity. The projections were gone. They were standing in a small concrete room. A single terminal blinked in the center, displaying one line of text. Echo phase complete. Subjects ERO-1 and O2 stable. Daniel stared at the screen. Subjects? Eva's voice trembled for the first time. They've already started the next phase. A door hissed open on the far side of the room. Cold white light spilled in. Beyond it was not the warehouse, but a clean, sterile hallway. White walls, surveillance cameras, the emblem of Division 9 printed on the floor. Eva met his eyes. They were never testing the devices, Daniel. They were testing us. And before he could respond, the lights cut out completely. In the darkness, a voice echoed through hidden speakers. Calm, familiar, almost reassuring. Welcome back. Agent Holt. Phase 2 begins now. Daniel froze. It was Monroe's voice. And then the door sealed shut behind them. What if the man ordering a cheeseburger at your local fast food counter wasn't who he seemed, but a government agent executing the final move of a year-long undercover mission? It began like any other Tuesday evening. The kind of night when the streets hum with the low rhythm of city life and neon lights flicker off wet asphalt. The burger joint sat on the corner of 8th and Main, a small grease-stained cube of yellow light in a sea of darkness. The sign buzzed, half dead. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt oil and fried salt. A teenager mopped the floor without looking up. 2 cooks argued near the fryer. No one noticed the man in the gray jacket step through the door. He looked ordinary enough. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, eyes tired but sharp. He moved with quiet precision, like someone who'd been trained not to waste a single motion. In one hand, he held a folded menu. Odd, considering the menu glowed above him in giant letters. In the other, a small, unremarkable phone, its screen cracked in the corner. The phone vibrated once. He didn't check it. He walked to the counter. The cashier, a young woman with a nose ring, greeted him with the usual cheerlessness of someone 3 hours into a long shift. "Evening? What can I get you?" He glanced up at the glowing menu as though considering. But his eyes were elsewhere, tracking the reflection of the kitchen window in the metal countertop, the movement of a man in the corner booth, the faint ticking sound coming from the soda machine that wasn't ticking before. "I'll have a number 7, he said finally, voice calm. "No pickles. And can you make it silent?" The cashier blinked. "Silent?" He smiled faintly. "It's on the secret menu." She laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. Behind her, the fryer hissed louder, almost drowning out the faint static that began crackling through the ceiling speakers. The man leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Tell your manager that Code 9 has been activated." Her fingers froze mid-press on the touchscreen. "Sir, I don't—" He placed a 20 on the counter. "You don't need to understand. Just pass the message." Something in his tone, measured, unhurried, made her obey without question. She turned toward the back, calling for the manager. The man waited, eyes flicking to the booth in the corner again. The man sitting there wore a hoodie, his head down, phone out. But his posture was too stiff, his attention too steady. Every few seconds he'd glance at the door, watching for someone. When the manager appeared, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his apron, the agent gave a slow nod, almost ceremonial. The manager's face paled instantly. He didn't ask questions. He simply turned, muttering something to the kitchen staff. The hum of the restaurant shifted. Subtle, but there. A rhythm breaking. The fryers went silent. The cash registers froze. Even the flickering lights above the booth steadied, glowing unnaturally still. For a few seconds, it was as if the whole place held its breath. The teenager with the mop looked around, confused. "Yo, what's going on?" No one answered. The man in the gray jacket reached into his pocket, pulled out a small folded napkin and set it on the counter. On it, written in faded ink, was a name, M. Carter. The manager's voice trembled. "Is it him?" The man nodded once. Outside, across the street, a car engine revved. Another joined. Then another. Headlights flicked on in perfect sync, forming a semicircle around the restaurant. Inside, the air grew heavy. The girl at the register stepped back, heart pounding. The man in the booth finally stood up. Gray jacket didn't move. His reflection glimmered faintly in the stainless steel counter, the ghost of a smile there for an instant before disappearing. The hooded man walked toward the exit, pretending to take a phone call, but his hand never left his pocket. The faint outline of a pistol grip pressed against the fabric. "Don't," said the agent quietly. The hooded man froze. He didn't turn. The room seemed to shrink around them, everyone else fading into the periphery. The agent stepped forward, his shoes barely making a sound on the tiled floor. The distance between them was 10 feet, then 8, then 5. 3 months undercover, the agent said softly. All for a man who couldn't keep his head down. The hooded man turned slowly, his face pale under the flickering light. "You don't understand, man. They said they'd—" "I understand perfectly." A long silence. The soda machine released one final hiss of carbonation, like a sigh. "Then you know," the hooded man whispered. "There's no walking away from this." The agent's phone buzzed again. One new message flashed across the cracked screen. "Order confirmed. Execute." He looked up. "I never planned to walk away." The first gunshot didn't sound like one. It was muffled, suppressed, just a soft thump that barely echoed. The hooded man staggered back, clutching his arm. Panic erupted instantly. The cashier screamed. The mop clattered to the ground. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted to call the police, but before anyone could move, the front door burst open. 2 men in black jackets stormed in, eyes scanning, weapons drawn but low. "Federal agents!" one barked. "Everyone down!" The gray-jacketed man raised his hand slowly, calm as still water. His badge glinted beneath his coat. "You're late," he said. He already made the call. "What call?" one of the agents demanded. But it was too late. A faint beep echoed from behind the counter. Then another. The fryer. The soda machine. Even the neon sign outside, all synchronized, pulsing once every 2 seconds. The gray-jacketed man's eyes hardened. Everyone out now. The restaurant exploded into motion. Customers crawled under tables, sprinted to the exit. The agents grabbed the wounded man, dragging him toward the door. Grease-slick floors made every step feel like slow motion. Through it all, the man in gray moved with eerie calm, directing people, scanning surfaces, his mind piecing together the pattern behind the pulses. He reached behind the counter, tearing open a lower panel. Inside, wrapped in foil and grease, sat a small black device, its red light blinking faster now. A voice came over his earpiece. "Control to Delta 7, what's your status?" He exhaled. "Package confirmed. Detonator is live. Can you disarm?" "Not from here. The signal's remote." Extraction in 60 seconds. He looked toward the front. The others were gone. Only the manager remained, frozen by the register, hands trembling. "Go," the agent said. "What about you?" "Someone has to finish the order." The manager hesitated only a moment before bolting out the door. The agent crouched beside the counter, staring at the blinking light. His fingers hovered above the device, tracing the edges, feeling the faint vibration under his palm. Then suddenly the light stopped. Just one long, steady glow. He froze. From outside came the distant wail of sirens growing louder. The entire street was flooded with red and blue. But inside the restaurant there was only the hum of the flickering light and the faint buzz of the broken neon sign. The agent straightened slowly, eyes narrowing. Someone else had cut the signal. He turned, scanning the booths, the windows, the reflection in the metal napkin dispenser. That's when he saw it, a silhouette standing across the street watching through the glass. A woman, tall, coat fluttering in the wind, her expression unreadable. She raised a small black remote, clicked once, and the red light on the device vanished completely. He stepped closer to the window, but before he could speak, she was gone. Outside, the agents were shouting, securing the perimeter, but he barely heard them. His gaze lingered on the wet pavement where she'd stood, on the faint reflection of the fast food sign above him. Delicious, fast, unforgettable. The irony twisted in his chest. He slipped the now-dead device into his pocket and walked out into the flashing lights. The other agents rushed toward him, questions firing from every direction. Who was the target? How did she know the codes? Was it an inside job? But the man in the gray jacket said nothing. He just kept walking until the crowd noise faded behind him. The street stretched ahead, silent, gleaming like a blade under the city lights. In his earpiece, a single voice crackled through. "Mission incomplete." Awaiting further orders, he didn't answer. His eyes drifted toward a small diner sign flickering at the end of the block. He smiled faintly, almost to himself. "Maybe next time," he whispered. "I'll try the fries." He turned the corner and vanished into the night. But the next morning, before the cleanup crew even arrived, the restaurant's security footage revealed something no one could explain. The moment right before the signal went dead, the soda machine display flickered for a fraction of a second, spelling out 2 words. Order pending. And somewhere across the city, another restaurant light blinked awake.